And welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast, recording from Austin, Texas, where we talk faith, culture, and everything in between. I'm Pastor Plek, your host, and with me in studio this morning is the unbelievably incredible Mrs. Catie Sas. How are you?
I thought you were going to say James.
Well, yeah, and then I got stuck on the slurping, and I thought I needed to introduce you.
Yeah, I slurped coffee right before you were going to start. So.
And also Pastor Joseph Aiken III. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And Pastor James Foster.
Thanks for having me.
He has a spiritual gift of good looks, and we are so grateful that he is in studio with us once again.
He's definitely giving us his radio voice right now.
Yeah.
Just want you all to know.
Yeah, that was a little deeper.
It was
a little distracted by this big mic in my face.
Yeah, no, listen, you gotta focus. This is like all about becoming one with your mic. Don't stand up straight, sit up straight, and get ready for an incredible podcast experience for everyone here. Now, we're going to jump right in. James, you gave an incredible sermon yesterday at Wells Branch Community Church. And while Joseph was giving an incredible sermon at Crossroads Community Church, this is kind of like, this might be a future of things to come. Like one day with you guys planting different churches, we'll bring it all back. We'll have like multi-pastor thing.
3 sermons in one, competing sermons?
Yeah, not competing, like complimentary sermons.
Yes, complimentary. There you go.
That's better.
Anyway, I wanted to talk about your talk yesterday, James, specifically at Wells Branch Community Church, because we talked about Joseph's talk yesterday, the previous week, because did you do the same one or did you change it?
Same one. I mean, I changed it a little bit, but same one.
Yeah, way to go.
Gave it its own flavor.
Yeah. Every church gets its own flavor because you can't just, the jokes don't always land.
100.
You can't just give everyone vanilla.
That's right.
You got to add some toppings.
Little spice. Okay, so
directed for Joseph.
So James, we were talking about community yesterday. Oh gosh. Jeez.
Everything's about race.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right, can we move forward here? All right. So your sermon title was hostility or humility as we're building community.
Yeah.
So really hostility or humility. And you went to James. Is that your favorite book of the Bible?
It's got to be. Yeah. So practical and obviously just a great title of the book.
Just like you. You are so practical and you have a great title. So talk to me about why we isolate from community and really where you were trying to drive home the big point, the big idea.
Yeah, I mean, we have to always decide if we're going to choose hostility or humility. I think there's a reason that we could be mad at somebody in our life literally every day.
Yes.
That we could hold on to something. People are imperfect, and part of being in community with imperfect people is that we're going to experience brokenness, and we're going to see like selfishness and different things that'll pop up. And a lot of it is just how we interpret different things that are happening to us. But there definitely exists sin too that's going to divide us from being in community with each other. And so for us to have a posture that is compatible with unity and oneness, we need to be like Jesus. We need to be humble. We need to be willing to place ourselves low to lift others up and for the greater good for the community as a whole.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because one of the things that I know I say this a lot, and I'm sure other pastors do too, that if you when you come to our church from another church, you're going to find whatever issues you were leaving, you're going to find them again here. Mm-hmm. And what you're going to find is that you're the common denominator between all the issues. So, and Catie, because you've really only experienced one church family experience, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you don't have the experience of going from church to church, but what you have done is anytime there has been conflict, I feel like you've been one of the people that's addressed conflict probably at the championship level.
Well, I mean, that's very flattering.
The queen of conflict.
The queen of conflict, Mrs. Catie Sas.
No, I'm very comfortable in embracing conflict.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think I
think that's rare. I think that the title Queen of Conflict is actually a pretty good one, because I think you do it as well as anybody.
I think it also comes from like a very, like, I can get intense. And so it's like, if I hear, this is not the part that I'm proud of, but if I like hear that you're talking about me, I'm going to go to you and say, hey, say it to my face.
You going to say it just like that?
Say it to my face. And
I don't think that's, y'all think that y'all interpret that as being a queen of conflict?
No, I'm saying that's not something
you have like
that
a
is
shank
like
in your hand
good.
at this point, or what?
I think I've grown a lot in my tact. And I mean, I slapped a girl in when I was in 4th grade in the face.
Oh, you hardcore right there.
Let's just bring It's my like proud moment at fourth grade.
There it is.
She was talking about me, so I went and slapped her in the face.
So
and then I got ISS.
Yeah.
No, I got ISS the next day. It was
That's
kind of the
in-school
worst.
suspension for those who've never experienced that.
No, in all seriousness, I think I've seen a deeper relationship come out after conflict.
Yeah, it's good.
And so that's why I'm so passionate about, like, if I sense that there's kind of tension, and just like you were talking about yesterday in your sermon about how you not confronted, but you called this person, you talked to them, and you kind of had to like humble yourself and say, hey, like, I feel like there's something here, is everything okay? Do we need to talk about something?
Yeah.
And there's so much beauty in that, and God works in that. And so I've experienced that many times. And so, it's not like, oh, I'm not afraid of conflict. It's no, I know that there's amazing fruit and just beautiful Holy Spirit works that come out of pursuing that.
And James, you came up with 3 ways that we isolate from community. I think it was like protecting our position, preserving our pride, and pursuing our passion, which I really want to compliment you on the alliteration. Way to go.
Yeah, double P's. Wow.
Double Ping a triple resistance to the big idea that you're trying to get across is pretty powerful.
Yes, I like what you did there.
So talk about protecting our position. How do we do that?
Yeah, so we protect our position. The specific example I talked about was, okay, if I have this ministry or something that I'm really excited about that I'm doing, and then somebody else wants to bring a better idea, I could say, hey, no, let me box you out of this thing. This is my area. Right. I don't want to lose that area of influence. I don't want to lose that responsibility. So let me push back against that. And I think that we find ourselves doing that of like Saul he wanted to be the king. He wanted to stay the king. And so because he wanted to stay the king, he could not be united with David, even though David was the only guy who could help him to experience peace when he was literally tormented.
Nice. Okay. And then how about preserving our pride?
Preserving our pride, we like to dig in our heels and say, no, I'm not going to budge off of this thing. Sometimes we do that through, if with this example of this person, it feels like, is there beef or is there not beef, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if there's an issue with us, but I'm willing to call you and say, hey, I want to just clear the air because I don't know if there is, but if I did do something wrong, I really do want to apologize for it. I want to make it right because I'm not okay with us being at odds with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not okay with that. But that takes laying down your pride. That takes setting that thing aside and saying, hey, even if this becomes an embarrassing moment later, even if this person uses this against me later, I'm okay with that because I'm at peace with God because I'm doing what God's called me to do. Yep. And that should lead me to peace with others. And that's kind of the culture we're hoping to create with that. But you have to lay down your pride for that to happen.
All right. And then the last one is pursue our passion.
Yeah. So James 4:1 says, what causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? So we have these passions that are grown out of order from like a good thing to the ultimate thing. And anything that becomes the ultimate thing then becomes the priority. And
anything that's not God, that's ultimate, becomes God, and that's idolatry.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we have to kill that passion that's overgrown and kind of put it back in its rightful place so that we can love people and be in unity. Yeah.
So I love that you were in James chapter 4, but you also went back to Old Testament characters, which is always a sort of a fascinating perspective of how, which is really neat because the book of James was written around the 40s of AD, and then you reference 1 Samuel, I guess 18 through 24, and that's written about 1,000 years before the book of James. And this is what's so great: people don't change. And
absolutely.
And so so talk to me about. I guess it was Saul, Jonathan, and David were your three characters that you were looking at. That Saul wanted to, I guess, protect his position. Jonathan had to unpreserve his pride, and then ultimately David pursue his passion for unity. Talk to us about those three characters.
Yeah, well, one thing that was interesting about that was Thursday last week. We're talking, and I'm racking my brain. I've had the flu all week. I'm exhausted, and I'm like just struggling with like. There's a lot of great stuff in James. I don't think it's really like going to come to life. without like a little bit more.
Yeah, let's talk real quick about how we do preaching planning. We picked James back in, was it like late January, early February?
Yeah.
And so what we were looking at was, originally the thought was that's how we isolate.
That's how we isolate. These are the reasons that we aren't in community. So kind of really building out, here are the problems, the reasons why we don't engage with community or keep that healthy community. What do we need to fight against? And it's really clear on all of the issues and why we're not united.
Yeah.
But it was hard to articulate that with all of those issues.
And it's really hard because one of the things that we always say here, don't be the hero and don't be the victim of whatever story you're telling. And that because again, if you're the hero, people just go, okay, that's you. If you're the victim, then people start like, you become like the Jesus of the story. Yep. And so ultimately what we're looking for in illustration is stories of being real, where you're kind of the one sort of at fault or holding grudges or that kind of thing. And that's difficult to do when you're talking about a situation like isolation without like, outing some weird relationship that you had.
Yeah, exactly. I think this was the first time I've had like endless amounts of stories from endless amounts of conflict, but I felt comfortable sharing almost none of them.
You're right.
And I'm just, it's.
Yeah, you text me and asked me.
I texted Joseph. I said, "Hey, have we like beefed before? What's the deal?" And
what did Joseph say? Yeah, you can't tell that one.
He said, "Well, I do preach more than you. Does that bother you?"
I think you already used that one. So you had to come up with one with me, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Coming up the story with me, because we did have I didn't know it was actually anything conflictual, and it might have been minor, and you did a good job of storytelling. But before we get into that, talk to us real quick about the difference, because I think all three of us noticed this, the difference between first service and second service as far as like the feeling.
Oh, first service is like all of your number one fans, and everybody's fully engaged and very responsive. Lots of we say we want the feedback, right?
Yeah,
we want to hear people laugh. We want to hear people like, "Amen." We want that.
Or moo.
Even the moves. Yeah, we need that. It really is helpful. And then second service is like, they're all your biggest critics. They're hysterically.
Is that because that's Catie Sas in second service?
Okay.
She rotates between the two.
That's true.
Yeah.
But
I go to both.
Absolutely.
Do you notice a difference?
Yeah. It's because the same people that are vocal go to first service.
Mm-hmm. I feel like
I think we're having Russian missiles hitting the Papa John next door.
Second service last week, it wasn't. I feel like it was a lot of laughter.
Did you get some laughs second service?
A lot of laughs, tears. There was more tears.
You're right. There were a lot of tears second service last time.
I must have just been lower energy or something, but first service was much fuller and very enjoyable to talk to. And then second service, I felt like I delivered the message better, but it was heard less. Which is
no, because I was at second service and I didn't get that energy.
There were responses, but first service was like, I could talk all day.
Yeah, first service, he was killing it. Like they're like, he might have been Jimmy Kimmel up there. I mean, it was like, whoa, James, you're funny.
You had a couple people say, "Oh yeah, that's good. That's good." Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is great. We just need a couple more and it's perfectly normal. Because when it's the same people, you're like, okay, I've got one fan. Yeah. That's good.
Or that's just the weird guy. Who doesn't know how to.
You got to do like I do. I pay people and let them know,
hey, you pay them up front and you prime the pump. There you go.
There you go.
Oh, man.
Okay. So what was cool about this Jonathan and Saul and David is actually that's where you're in your quiet times.
Yep.
That's where Joseph's in his quiet times. And it was just before where I was in my quiet times. After we talked, it was like my daily Bible reading was in that text. So I was just like, it was kind of cool how that all aligned.
Wait, you were in the same text that I was in for quiet time?
And Joseph was in the same place as well. So
wow.
This story that worked its way into our sermon was a Thursday new edition.
What are you doing in your quiet time? Or how did you happen to be on that?
A 90-day through the Old Testament.
Oh,
plan.
Bizarre. I'm on I'm in like day 185 of the Bible in 3 years. What are you doing?
I'm Old Testament, but I'm just at 1 Samuel. I don't know. You don't remember we was talking about?
Yeah, we do, but I was just wanting to clarify for our listening audience. Like that, it was a random.
Just happened to. Yeah, it did happen to.
Yeah,
overlap.
me too.
90 90 days through the Old Testament.
Katie, what are you reading in your Bible right now?
I'm in 1 John and 1 Corinthians.
Oh, good job. Good job.
Yeah.
How do you like read a chapter a day, or are you reading a plan? What are you doing?
I just read a chapter a day. I'm not good with plans. I just can't be told what to do. It's really difficult for me.
Katie, that's what makes you very unique. Okay, go ahead, James.
Or difficult.
No, that's good. So I thought it was cool that one of the things that I could have conflict with Chris over, and we have before, is Chris has a lot of great ideas that he'll bring to Thursday preaching practice. And sometimes it's like, well, should I even bring anything to Thursday, or is this just going to get rewritten?
This makes sense. It's coming out now.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Anyways, we're getting...
Wait, so you have to explain that, because I don't think everyone really understands.
We're getting to Thursday preaching practice, and I'm
Explain Thursday preaching practice.
So what it usually looks like is you come and you bring basically a rough draft of what you're bringing on Sunday.
Rough.
You're bringing it. You're going to preach the word. You're going to stand up. You're going to get feedback, and then based off that feedback, we kind of sharpen each other. We say, hey, this connected. This didn't connect. This illustration worked for me. I don't know about this one. This one, if you say it this way, it kind of sounds like you mean this. Did you mean to mean this, or did you not?
Mm-hmm.
And we're helping craft that message just so it connects with more of our audience, because we do want to connect the biblical text to our people,
right?
And kind of just providing that perspective of, here's what I'm hearing. I don't know if that's what you meant,
right?
And I think it's one of the reasons why it's a really powerful experience for all of us, because I think even when we're not preaching that week, we're part of the process, and we grow through that as teachers of God's word.
And to be fair, I usually rewrite my sermon as well every Thursday.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Or after the Thursday. The Thursday.
I honestly don't mind getting all the feedback.
Oh yeah, I'm just
not
more
be
insecure,
like
so it's
it's
harder
fine.
for me.
I can see that.
It's okay.
I mean, you did say everyone's more insecure than they're willing to admit.
Yeah. And here's growth right here.
Way to go.
Well, and I think when you said that, you had like 2 people nod, and you even said, "Oh, okay, 2 people are with me." Okay.
But everybody started laughing after you said that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's
You got a
just-
little,
But nobody wants to nod when you say that, because nobody wants you to know, or anyone
Exactly.
to know that they
Yeah.
agree.
Exactly. So I feel like the process was really helpful, and then bringing in Jonathan and David and Saul to really bring to life this idea of there is a reality of insecurity will divide you from people, but then humility is the cure. Humility is saying, hey, I'm not as good as I think I am, or as I pretend to be. Let me come, because that draws you in. That humility draws you in, and it's the likeness of Jesus, I think, that really is what draws people to that humility,
right.
of I'm willing to place myself low. I'm not pretending to have it together. That endears you to each other in just a really powerful way. And Saul, there's no way he could get that. I think he saw the writing on the wall. He saw that, hey, my time as king is coming to an end. He had sinned against God pretty terribly, and then God had removed his presence from him, and so then that insecurity kind of just flared up even more, and he's kind of becoming this crazy person as David is on the rise, and there's just this big hostility that's happening with the
right. So Saul essentially
David
tries to kill David, and then even tries to kill his own son.
Yeah, he's doing anything and everything that he can to protect his kingship, because he thinks that that's where all of his identity is. And so he's trying to protect that position. He's trying to put everything into that to say, I am the king, and I'm going to make sure that I stay king.
Katie, when you heard that, just from a lay person's perspective, like you're not sitting there preparing sermons, was that relatable as a person who wants to protect your position?
I don't know. No, not necessarily.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. I like so what would be the part, protect your position, or
maybe like a social position?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It doesn't necessarily mean like this is my job at work. It could be like your social standing, and if someone's talking bad about you, you might lose social standing. Is that a thing?
I was thinking maybe like friendship jealousy.
Ooh, talk to me about that.
Like if, I feel like I'm really close with someone, and we have like, we're best friends. And then if I see her and some other girl hanging out and getting really close, I'm like, excuse me, that's my best friend.
Yeah, so
like that's not your. And then they like, I'm thinking.
No, this
I don't know,
is
maybe
huge.
like
This is great.
It's funny. A few years ago, Catie and I talked about like
Katie
friendship jealousy. Catie
James'
Foster.
wife,
Yeah. And we were just like, and Ryan thought that's the most immature thing that y'all could ever like talk about, just like friendship jealousy we've ever had with each other. And just going like I don't know, you see like your best friend and then some other girl, they like make a post on social media or something. And then this other girl is like, oh my gosh, hang out with my bestie. And you're just like, excuse me, that's not your bestie. That's not, this is also like very high school, very.
So do you ever
like,
grow up from high school? Essentially what you're saying is no.
Well, yes, you do.
Oh,
I mean, this
how old
was
now?
this is literally an experience that we were talking about like at least 5 years ago.
Right, but do you ever experience that now?
No, I think that you just have to grow and be more confident in your relationships.
So this is like something you said like 5 years ago that would have been like
I'm like, okay, let me like try to think of something that
I can
I've
help
experienced.
Oh, good.
So let's say hypothetically, we
Okay.
say, Catie Sas on the podcast. No, let's not do that anymore. And you lose your position as a podcast panelist.
Yeah. I mean, that would sting, but I would have to go like whatever is best for the podcast.
Wow. Okay. So
That's
that's
maturity.
maturity, right? So I feel like that's the part where
Because there's your fleshly response of that's bull crap.
Come on. Fight for it.
Like, what the heck? And then, but there's your I want to be more like Christ and be mature in how I respond to this response.
That's like a David Jonathan type response.
And
Good answer.
Yeah.
and go like, you know what? Like, it's not about me.
Yeah.
Whatever is best for the podcast, like whatever is going to bring glory to God, that's what I'm for.
You want me to give you a better example?
Yeah.
Motherhood.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh. Come on, Joseph.
Gosh, why is it all
pastor
about
lady.
Well, you haven't been talking much, so I haven't either. So, but just trying to help you understand, like, what is something I have to protect my position as just a mother.
Okay.
And I mean, we've talked about it in past podcasts before, just feeling like I have to be this great mother, but I kind of suck at times at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and you
Yeah.
said
Oh,
that.
I've said that. Yeah.
I mean, well,
the book I got has been really good.
yeah.
Oh, which book did you get?
I talked about it last time, called Peaceful Parent.
right.
Happy Kids.
So just dealing with that, like feeling like, man, I have to hold the standard. I see everyone's highlight reels on social media, and then you see them in public and all this kind of stuff. I'm not that good of a mother. How do I get there? And so that may be more down like where you're at now when you think about protecting this position of, I want everybody to think I'm the best.
Yeah, and I think like I have always loved posting recipes of like things that I cook for her, or like healthy snacks I make for her, or like these like homemade pouches and homemade granola bars, and all of these things that I love to just post and share. Not to go, oh, look at me, I'm like making these healthy homemade foods for my baby, but just to like, that's just a hobby of mine. But then if I like go to a play date, knowing, okay, well, we also stopped at like McDonald's on the way here. And I, gave her some like she doesn't eat like that all the time. But then if it's brought up in a play date surrounding where moms are like, oh my gosh, like if they're giving their kid, goldfish or something, and they're like, oh, it's not as healthy as what Catie gives Ava, but not everybody can like be like that. There's part of me that doesn't want to say, well, we ate McDonald's on the way here, so I, not that great. Like, there's part of me that kind of wants to keep that perception of me of like, oh yeah, like everything organic, everything healthy, everything da-da-da. But I have to be honest and be like, oh yeah, no, actually I'm not.
Yeah,
and
well,
consistent all the time.
Back to James, that Jonathan really was one kind of that like emptied himself in a sense, where he takes off his sword, he takes off his robe, and gives it to David, which is like saying, you are now in my position, which I thought was sort of fascinating.
Yeah, everything that I wanted you would presume that Jonathan would want as the son of the king, as somebody who's kind of grown up with this, you would assume this is what he's in line, right? He is the rightful next person to get that. And he's older than David, so it's kind of weird for him to then be like subservient to David in this way, and to make that covenant
being
with
older,
him.
he's probably anywhere from 50. He could be 12 at the minimum to maybe 20 years older. So he could almost be a father figure for David, which is sort of like, usually we think of like David as teenagers together, David and Jonathan teenagers together hanging out in high school. And Jonathan's like, oh, you're awesome. You should start for the football team. But no, it's more like Jonathan's been a warrior for a while, leading battles, fighting the enemy, and rightful heir in a very honorable way. And instead of like trying to hold on in the flesh, he sees what God has done in the spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's this recognition of God is doing something in David, and I want to be doing what God is doing. I want to be supporting what God's doing. Kind of like what you said with the podcast. Well, if this is what the podcast would go, I want to do what's best for that. It's like this. I want this unity more than I want what's best for me or what I thought might be best for me.
It's good.
And that's the definition of humility right there, is saying I'm going to place myself low so that others might be lifted up.
Mm-hmm. And then to David, talk to us about what David's response was.
Yeah, David is also a great picture of humility here, because he was willing to risk his life in pursuing Saul after he had the chance to kill him. He cut the piece of his robe. He had to go out and meet him. Other soldiers of Saul's would be out there in that space, right? And so there's a clear danger of, also Saul has himself tried to kill him multiple times, of, hey, you're risking your life. This guy has been literally searching for you. You reveal yourself to him, there's a good chance it could not go well for you, right? Of like, hey guys, David's in the cave. Let's go kill him. But David's willing to say, no, I want peace here. I'm going to pursue you. I'm going to care for you. David had been introduced to him. He'd been kind of like played the musical instruments for him. He had multiple conversations where Saul had negative, like David had every reason to not want to be united to Saul and to just take Saul out, right? Of like, hey, you promised me this wife, this daughter for a wife, and you gave me another wife, who's specifically an idol worshiper, and you thought would lead me astray and lead to my demise. You're sending me on these missions that would kill me because you want me dead.
And all it's doing is
making him stronger.
Yeah.
And it's just showing that God is with me, right? And so he's not focused on like Saul was a bad dude, and Saul had wronged him time and time again, but David wasn't out to make that known to Saul. He wasn't out to like really just rub it in Saul's face of like, this is why you're not going to be king. This is why I'm going to be king. But instead he was saying, I'm going to pursue unity. I'm going to pursue you and say, hey, even though you're trying to kill me, I don't want this. I don't want any part in this. I want to be.
What's sort of fascinating too is that Saul puts David on the run, and he ends up going to Philistia, which is the home of Goliath, with Goliath's sword. And what I love about that is like he's got this promise of potential to be king. Like Samuel, who everyone, the whole nation honored Samuel, has anointed him, and you would think, oh, it's over. I'm leaving Israel, the place where I was going to be king, and I'm now going to go be a madman in another country. And I think I think at times for us as Christians, we can take a circumstance and say, see, I got to take care of myself. God takes care of those who take care of themselves. And so I'm not going to go to Philistia and, bury my head in the sand. I'm going to go and fight and stick it to the man. And David doesn't do that, which I think is counterintuitive for the way a lot of us sort of view the world.
Yeah, there's no vengeance, there's no spite, there's no here's where I'm going to come after you, but instead he says, I'm going to trust God to make this right, and I'm going to do my best to live at peace. And part of that includes running away, pretending to be crazy, and
then eventually
survive.
Ends up the cave of Adullam, and he feels lonely, and that's when he prays to God. And what I love about this, and there's part of me that makes me think he should have gone to the cave of Adullam to begin with, like he just goes to the Lord, and he's desperate, he's run out of his own strength, and God sent his brothers and his parents hear about him being in the cave of Adullam. They come to him, and then every person that was in debt or angry or distressed or disgraced shows up, and all of a sudden now he has an army of 400 men to go marauding. So I thought that was sort of an interesting turn, how the Lord provided for him an army when he stopped sort of chasing or trying to figure out in his own strength.
Yeah, this would be a great sermon series for the future where we can really, really come and land on all these different details. I mean, the story itself is fascinating, especially how it shows the Lord's provision for David. He's crying out in the caves, and he trusts that the Lord is his refuge and his strength.
Yep.
And I think that when you see like Psalm 59, where he's praying, okay, I will sing to you, you're my fortress, the God who shows me steadfast love. You have been a fortress and a refuge in the day of my distress. He believes it.
Right.
You can see that he believes it through the way that he responds when he has a chance to take Saul out.
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
That ultimately, that sort of peacemaking allows him later, whenever Ishbosheth, I guess, becomes king in when Saul and Jonathan die, he becomes king, and the people throw off Ishbosheth and they want David, and David doesn't have to do anything other than just accept the kingship, which is kind of great.
Yeah.
All right, here's a question that we got from for the podcast. The sermon skipped verse 10 in 1 Samuel 18. Was that on purpose, James? Were you skipping verses?
I was trying to stay within my allotted time frame.
No, that's good. That's good.
And we did cover James 3, James 4, 1 Samuel 18, 1 Samuel 24.
Sometimes we call that Bible surfing, which is always something we try not to do.
A little bit of skipping around within there.
Are you calling him out over here?
No, it's just the reality. Like I appreciate the question, but this person evidently, they sort of felt gypped. They didn't get a verse 10. And so it's good we're going to get to it. But one of the things I encourage as a preacher is you don't want to just zip across the Bible unless there's specific connections, and just kind of stick on the connections, because then if you're kind of going multiple directions with the message, it gets really confusing. So I don't think you weren't trying to hold out on anybody. It just, for the sake of time and a direction of the character development, you skip verse 10. All right, so here's a question. The sermon skipped over verse 10 in 1 Samuel 18. Notably, a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul. Can you provide some color around this harmful spirit and why God is sending harm and division versus, say, the devil, or just purely from our human nature? So why is God sending harm and division here on Saul? What do you think, Pastor James?
Yeah, so I would say that the big thing in that text is, there's this harmful spirit that had been introduced earlier in 1 Samuel. So Saul had the people wanted a king. They got a king. Saul was that guy. He rebelled against God. He kind of went against what God wanted. And then from that time, the spirit of God came off of Saul. And you saw times where this spirit would, for a period of time, this distressing spirit that says it's from the Lord would come upon Saul, and he would act extra crazy in that time. And what's cool about it is in 1 Samuel 16, after David is anointed by Samuel, the way that Saul and David are introduced to each other is that Saul has this distressing spirit, this evil spirit that comes upon him, and the only way that he gets relief from that is through David playing his secret chord.
So why do you think God would send this spirit?
I would say that,
and just a disclaimer: anytime you talk about the mind of God, you're always in dangerous territory. But
yes,
do your best to kind of field that.
I would say that that there were evil spirits around. That whenever Saul was anointed as king, they were wanting to take him down because they wanted to take down God and his people, right? And when Saul rebelled and he chose to go against God, God said, "Okay, I'm gonna bring a new king," and so him removing his protection, his peace there, then open the door for that distressing spirit to come upon him, which you could say is from the Lord. Of the Lord is kind of accelerating the plan for David to take over. You could say it's from the Lord in that he's just removing his protection, and then these evil spirits are coming upon him and bringing about those desires that he ultimately has on his own.
Right.
But verse 10, where that is, it says, the harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre as he did day by day. So David's playing the song. He's calming him down. This same harmful spirit that's been coming upon him comes upon him again, and it leads him to this place of that's where he's throwing the spear.
Right.
That's where he's trying to get his vengeance there. And it shows the full humanity of Saul in a way, but I would say that obviously that was incited by that spirit bringing that about, that desire about
That's
him.
good. Yeah, I feel like that was a solid answer. Any other thoughts on that, Pastor Joseph?
No thoughts from me.
Yeah, I feel like that really hits it. I mean, this is where you're always dealing with, whenever there's evil involved, is God causing it or sending it? Is God allowing it? Does it really matter? Because ultimately, God's will is being done in that Saul is. You remember when Pharaoh his heart is hardened and he is looking to actively seek to destroy God's people, and God uses his destructive nature to bring glory to himself. When Joshua crosses the Jordan and he's going to destroy the enemy, they attack him first, and their true nature kind of comes out and he's able to defeat them. Anyway, there's a part where God allowing the sinful nature of man to really be exposed and come out. It's not really, you could say he is sending it, as if like when you lift the gate on a guard dog on a piece of meat, it's not like you have to like send the dog, just lift the release and then the dog is sent. So anyway, I feel like that might be a way.
Do you feel like it's like God allowing us to show who we truly are?
Yeah. Gosh. Okay. This brings up one thing. I'd forgotten about this movie until your brother-in-law reminded me of it. The Kingsman. Have you ever seen that movie series, The Kingsman?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I love it.
So in the first movie, the secret operative agent, the Kingsman gets, Samuel L. Jackson sends a some sort of inhibitor lessener, so your full sinful nature, your full anger is lived out, and they have this like big epic battle in this hate church in Kentucky, and this agent just kills the entire church because whatever it is blocking his anger receptors. This again, it's a movie, so the parts of it are extreme, but that to me was a great picture of hell. Like what hell is being released of all of the common grace of God, Holy Spirit inhibitors, so that your anger is given full vent, and any sort of rage and anger is sort of taken full out, and you're just killing everybody.
Like we have full freedom to sin as terribly as we want.
And because right now, the reason why we don't sin a lot of times is because it'd just be really annoying to go to traffic court, or it'd be annoying to go sit in jail, or a lot of your freedoms will be taken away. And so therefore you don't do some things because you know that there is trouble beyond.
Yeah.
And so when that sort of like fear of retribution or whatever is removed, and you're given full vent to the wrath within you, then you become the worst version of yourself. And that is when people talk about, I choose, hell for the people and heaven for the climate. What they're saying, what they obviously don't know what they're saying, is that you would hate everything and everyone. And in the movie, the agent goes, I wanted to do it. I was enjoying killing all those people. And I think that's what happens for us, is like there's almost like your anger is fed by the more that you kill or the more that you give full vent to it. And I think that's what happens whenever the common grace of God is removed, which ultimately will happen when the Holy Spirit, whenever the rapture happens in our lifetime or on earth. But that happened here whenever the protection of God and the Holy Spirit was removed out of Saul's life. That gave a vacancy, and things might have been set right in his heart and his life, but boom, he was infused by the darkness and he was given full vent to his wrath, and that's why he's trying to kill everybody.
Wow.
In fact, he does kill 85 priests and their children and all that when in 1 Samuel 21-ish, whenever David goes to Ahimelech the priest, and the only one survivor is Abiathar, his son. But 85 men, women, and children are killed by Doug the Edomite, which you got to just sort of, it's like, thanks, Doug. And none of Saul's soldiers would do it, but Doug had no problem because he wasn't related to any of them. Anyway, it's a lot.
Yeah, the Saul story is definitely complex, with him rebelling and then the Lord regretting making him king, and all sorts of layers.
Gosh, yeah. When you get into, and God grieved or regretted making him king, and in that same chapter it says, is God a man that he would grieve or regret? And you're just like, well, what do you do with that? That's for another podcast. I actually talked about it in a sermon a couple years ago. We don't have time for it in this episode.
There you go.
So any other thoughts, Mrs. Catie Sas? Any other thoughts from you?
Nope.
Pastor James?
Yeah, we got to fight for unity, choose humility over hostility, and it's worth it.
Nice.
It's hard to do. It sometimes takes putting your pride aside, but do it.
Pastor Joseph, any thoughts?
Just excited about the next few weeks of bringing back unity in community.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, hey, thanks everybody for listening. We are so glad to have you. If you have any questions, make sure you text us at 737-231-0605. And we would love to follow up with any of the questions you have. And man, have an awesome week of worship.